Hey, Paul here. Sorry for being away for a while. I've been busy with some client work again that I had to finish up, and today I feel a bit sick. I'm hoping it's not the corona. I'm getting tested tomorrow. Anyway, in this how I build video, which I think as I'm recording it now, I think I'll share it publicly with the whole community. I want to do something I've always wanted to do. I want to make a starter template doc. So a starter, I don't have one myself, by the way. I always built this starter thing from scratch, but over and over as I was building things for clients over and over, I saw that I'm repeating some patterns throughout these docs. So the foundation of these docs is similar. So why not make myself a starter template for such new beginnings, and also why not record a video about how I make it, and why not share the starter template itself. And as I'm recording the video, I'm going to explain all the best practices, all the logic that goes behind these solutions that I put into this foundation doc. You know, like there's this website notion.vip, VIP, the one, something similar. I want to do something similar for Coda, the codatricks.com. But so these guys, they have something like a bulletproof template, something that every Notion user apparently has to copy, and it contains all the foundation stuff. And I don't know, never checked it out actually. But yeah, so I want to do something like that for Coda. It's a fun thing, right? How am I gonna do the something similar if I haven't even seen the original one? Anyway, the starter template. So I'll build a doc. As I said, it's gonna take me an hour, so I'm going to try to limit these videos into an hour lifetime time frame. Yeah, mixing these two words together always. Anyway, and so the template, I'm going to share it on my Patreon with any tier patrons. So it's gonna be like Patreon only thing, and the video is gonna be available for the whole community. Okay, let's start a new doc from a blank page. Yeah, I'm making all sections wide. That's something that I'm still calling them sections. It's an old habit. We used to have folders and sections within a doc before we had any actual folders in the workspace. So forgive me if I call them not pages but sections sometimes. So what I always do, so first I always make them wide. I now know that with copy page, maybe, well, I always, I'm trying to ask Coda to put this setting as a default here in default for new pages. So far, not there. Could have been worked around using the copy page function, but that's gonna be over engineering, don't you think? So what I'm doing, I'm always making a database section side of the doc. And as you know, when you make a new table, right, you make a base table. So the first instance of a new table, we call it a base table, the one where the data actually belongs. So it has all the data, and if you reference it in any formulas, even if it has any filters on it, or it doesn't, it always returns the whole data set for that table. And when you try and copy that table elsewhere, or when you, elsewhere in your doc, and it creates a view, right? Or whenever you reference the table with a slash function, you just type in the name of the table, you get a view. So you have just one base table, and you can have as many views as you wish on that base table, but the base table is always the one that you created first as a new table. And my biggest rule of thumb is that all base tables should go on a database like piece of your doc. So your doc should have two separate like realms. They can be grouped however, but these have to be two separate things. It's the interface, the user-facing side of your dog, the one that your users will come to, log into each day. They will go into some pages there, do some things with your data or with their data. And there needs to be this other realm, the realm for a dog builder, for a dog maintainer. And that one has to be a bird's eye view on your data, on what data you're operating in your dog. So instead of having fancy, I don't know, fancy sorting, fancy conditional formatting, fancy whatever, you have that, or fancy forms, you have that in your user-facing side of the dog as views, exclusively as views. Now, no base tables have to go there, ever. Well, maybe if you're building a wiki, in which case this video is not really for you, because wikis, you just make pages and nest them however you wish, and then you don't have to worry about your data structure. I'm talking about the docs that become your small apps, the apps for your back office or your businesses, the docs that become like small CRMs or accounting software, or some time tracking, some management, task management solutions. So these docs that are meant to grow and that are built around the data in your business, Yeah, so for all the tables that actually contain the data, you put them into a database piece of your doc. And then you can go and try nesting these things. If you wish, if you have many items in your database, you go and I just realized I'm not using the zoomed in version. Okay, I'm not that far in the tutorial yet. Anyway, and that's where you add a place for your pages. So let's build our starter template on something. Let's maybe keep it simple, the projects and tasks, because it's something that everyone can then build upon, or maybe clients, projects and tasks. So let's have this structure of three things: clients, projects and tasks. No, actually no. Let's have a projects and tasks, and let's have something like a project template with some template tasks that need to be copied for every time you create a new project. It needs to give you the default checklist. So the tasks, let's say the checklists. Okay, so what I'm doing next is I'm creating tables, and all the tables that I'm creating, I'm always naming them, the base tables, I'm always naming them with the prefix db. So if it's a table that's meant to store data, I'm calling it with the prefix db. db projects, and projects, always in the plural. And that's how I call my page as well. So the rationale for that is that when a builder who makes a doc or looks whether they need to add a new table to the setup, or what tables they have to reuse, they always they don't have to go into doc map, which is not super informative, not super intuitive. So let me just show you what I mean. Let's create another table for no, not a view of DB projects, and always again wide page. Let's create a new table, DB tasks. So the rationale behind naming tables like this is because whenever you're gonna use them in your formulas, it will be easy for you to start typing a prefix db, and you will have all your list of, so right now we don't have any views, right? But as your dog grows, you'll have like dozens of tables and I don't know, maybe hundreds of views. It's possible with Coda. What you'll see is a huge list of items to sort through, and if you're just using them by names like projects, tasks, today's projects, some like these projects, those projects, so it's very easy that you'll just confuse at some point a base table or a view, and you won't pay attention that it reads a table or a view of a table here. You'll just mess up at some point. And what we want to do when we are building for sustainability is that we want to avoid messing up at all costs, to reduce the risk of messing up. So using this prefix adds us this capability. You just mentally train yourself to always use that prefix, to just type in db, and then your list on in the formula editor is well, you cannot mess this up. You're gonna always read from the database, from the base table, and not the view by mistake. So that's the reason behind the prefixes. And the reason behind the pages, and another thing, is that I'm always trying to use the same icons for databases. So I saw clients always try to like projects, and they have a project icon, and then they have something like tasks icon. They do different things. So the thing is, you can have this to all your heart's desire in the user-facing interface, like if it helps your users to navigate through pages. But for a doc builder, these are useless. It takes more effort to try and recognize what this page is for, what base table it hosts, by looking at the icon. The icons are very loosely tied to the concepts, right? So you don't have it takes some effort to understand that it's an icon for projects, right? So what I'm doing instead is all the database pages, I'm always giving them the same or more or less the same icons. I can use some variations of the database icon, like there's something like small table or something else, or the table that's not used anymore. That's up to you. That's there you can be a bit creative with using these database icons. You have a few more of them, you just need to look for them. But I'm bringing this habit from your good old coding. From your good old coding, because I'm a coder. I come from coding background, where you have all these things that you see here. I don't know. Yeah, like that. So these things here, the folders are like packages, like some sort of organizing your code in a code, right? So we're looking at Java now, Java language. And these are classes, and classes are basically tables. In programming, classes basically do what tables in Coda do. So they describe some concept in your business model. And as you can see, the icons are, so there's some commenter, language, whatever, but they don't have the icons of language or Google Translate or something, or a comment here. They all have the icons helping the developer to understand. So these all things are classes or interfaces. So I is an interface, C is a class, then there's small variations of this class icon, like the class with these gray things. Maybe it's an abstract class or a static class. I don't know. I don't remember the notions here, because probably I used a different theme or something else. It's been a while since I used JetBrains IDEs. Anyway, the idea here is that it's helpful because we as doc makers, and hopefully that's what you're also gonna train yourself to do, are very good at already looking at the structure by names, and you don't need icons to just confuse you. It's better, okay, if it's a small table or it's something that's a bit different from other tables, from other base tables. You can give it a slightly different icon, but it will benefit you if you keep it in one cohesive styling, your base tables, if you keep it like that. So what else you can do? You can, and we'll do that because that's something that I'm gonna build next. So we have our projects, we have our tasks, and we will have our task templates. So for a project you have, or actually maybe template tasks, which is a table for tasks to copy. And okay, I'm not gonna include this in an hour-long video. I guess when I'm finished recording, so I'm narrating, right now I'm narrating everything I'm doing, but then when I'm going to publish this template, I'm gonna add some explanations of what each page is for. But normally in the doc builders section, I normally don't include these comments, but sometimes I do, because sometimes I myself can forget about why I created that, or why I created that table like that specifically. I could like maybe created some extra columns that it's not apparent why I did it. So I can leave myself some notes here like this. I'm sorry. Okay, I really hope it's not COVID, but we'll see tomorrow. So we have our projects and we have our project name, and we can make it a display column, or actually just name or project. And let's keep our other two columns, let's just keep them as is for now. So we have tasks, we have a task title, whatever, and we have our lookup to the projects table. And we probably, what we're gonna do, other like basic thing in our template is that we want to have multiple people looking at this doc. Let's say it's a doc for a team. We want to have multiple people, and we want these tasks to be assigned to people. So what else we're gonna do? No, we are not gonna change this to a people column. And why is that? Because the people column is not, well, it's okay, but it's not really that flexible. It gives you this nice thing of subscribing to comments or notifying a person when they are selected for an item. That's a plus. That's the good thing behind the people column. But these people, so first, these either need to be added as editors to your doc so that you have them in your list, and that may not always be the case. The second thing, you cannot really add any, and that's the biggest problem, you cannot really add any extra information to these people records. So these are objects in your doc, they are very basic, they have a few fields like their name, their email, their avatar, their what else? Their role, perhaps, and probably just that. Maybe a few more technical fields that no one ever uses. So what I'm normally doing instead, oh God, very short jump cut. Okay, disaster avoided. That was team on my keyboard. Anyway, gosh. Anyway, back to the thingy. So what I was talking about, what I'm doing. So yeah, the biggest problem is that you cannot add extra fields, and that's often what you want to do. The extra fields to your employee records or the doc user records. And the third thing is with the with the people column, okay, you can have a list of people that the doc is shared with, or you can have a list of people that's in your G Suite workspace or in whatever, your Slack directory, Google Contacts. But still, like, you don't have really control over who's on that list and who's not. So as you might have guessed, what I'm usually doing is I'm creating a very separate table. Let's say DB employees or DB users or whatever. And then it depends on you whether you want to have a name and first name, last name separately, or you just use their name here. And who was there on my big patrons list? So Jonathan. Then we had, I think, I guess I just need to check who we had. Michael. No. No, I'll just throw out some names and Virginie. So we have our employees, and then if I wish, and actually that's what I usually do, I link each employee to a Coda user. So then here I have a people's column. Yeah, don't notify is added, and then I yeah, no one else here. So if I share it with me, myself, and I, does it? Huh. Yeah. So there's me, myself, and I, right? Three, three emails, three people. Anyway, and that's where you can add extra information. Like for instance, let's say you have yeah, DB employees. Let's say also you have separate teams like DB teams. That's also a thing in your doc. No need for these two columns, or okay, let's keep this one. So we have our employee, and let's say this employee is on teams, and the teams is gonna be a lookup, a multi selection lookup. We have our teams, which is team, let's say it's engineer, product management and sales, whatever, marketing, doesn't matter. And yeah, just let's we may do this, we may not. Actually, we don't have to do this. So we have our DB teams, and okay, this person is on engineering, this person is on product management, and this person is on sales. Right, so we're 23 minutes down, and we've just mentioned, so we have our project name, and we have our tasks which belong to a project. And now let's have our so let's say we have our team responsible, and let's say I'm just doing this to showcase a few really fundamental things that you will be often using in your docs. So you have the teams, and it's a single select. So for each project, there's a team for each task, there's a team responsible, and there's gonna be an employee assigned to. And then we also want to have something like a checkbox, and it's gonna be called is done. And the reason, and I also, that's one of my conventions. So I saw that often codants in their tutorials, they name their checkbox columns with a question mark in the end. And while that makes some sense, I always prefix such columns with is and not even are. I know that sometimes it doesn't make a grammatical, from grammar points of view, sense to name it is, like is tasks assigned or something, but I'm always prefixing it with is. And the reason for that is just the same as the reason behind prefixes behind the for tables. So that you can like do the db tasks, and when you type I or start typing is, you're already filtering down to just the checkbox columns, and you don't have to navigate the whole list or try to remember how that checkbox was named. And you'll find yourself using this pretty often, because for filters, for your some other formulas, you'll find yourself using these checkbox columns far more often that you'd use any text columns or any other columns. And partly the reason is that, for instance, if you want to filter down for unassigned tasks, or let's say there's some more complicated filter, what I'm usually advocating for is, unless you are very tight with your doc size and unless you're very worried about, unless you're hitting that 120 something megabytes limit actually hitting, and not just you're afraid you're prematurely optimizing for hitting that limit somewhere 2 years from now. What I'm advocating is creating a separate column. If something is calculated, if something's complicated, if you need to calculate something complicated on your row, something that uses pieces of this row, like is this a valid row? Like, can this be synced to some other docs, or can this be archived? And that condition is dependent on whether this is not blank and this is not blank and that is not blank and something else. And you want to filter by that, or let's say whatever, you, instead of having that expression somewhere in the filter or somewhere in the automation, make a column for that, calculate it right here, and name it like is valid, calculate it like here, so project is not blank, and task is not blank, and like assigned to is not blank, and whatever. And make it make it a checkbox column. Doesn't really matter if you keep it a text column, it still contains a true false value, a logical value. That's something I'm gonna expand on in my Coda fundamentals videos about data types and how they are actually stored. But make it a separate column, because then if you have a filter set up and you set a filter on is valid, is true or false, if you type in your formula for like is project is not blank or whatever here, this will be super confusing for you yourself to try and match the pieces. That okay, you have this formula there but the data is there, okay, you're already confused mentally. Keep it as, so the related pieces, keep them as close as possible. So if something's calculating, if you need to calculate something depending on this row, on the data in this row, make a column for that and store the result of that calculation in a column. That's, again, unless you know what you're doing and unless you're running into very, very tight performance constraints or doc size constraints. And here's another jump cut because my nose is blocked and I need to do something about it. Okay, much better. So where was I? Making columns for calculation. Okay, I guess we've covered that enough. Time to move on. It's almost half an hour into the video and I'm not really close yet. So why I added this team responsible and assigned to? So one thing that I want to do is, and that's something that you may often do, okay, your teams are bigger, you have your tasks in your template, so you don't want to have the full list. And that's, again, that's the flexibility that you get from using separate tables. Okay, you lose that thing with the automatic notifications and subscribing to comments. But the thing with comments really is that they are useful. I don't want to argue with that. And I've seen clients, even in complex docs that I tried to build, the docs that would avoid comments, people find them intuitive. To have comments in your rows and just comment right here, and everyone gets a notification. And yeah, the problem with comments though is that you cannot access them in, as of the time of recording of this video, you cannot really access them in your doc. So if you want to have some statistics, or you want to have the latest comments for each task right there presented to you in the interface, like you want to have here a list of tasks for a person, and like the comments on that task, you cannot have that unless you use a detailed layout and you scroll to the bottom. But you cannot reference them in formulas. You cannot format them as you wish to. I mean, to present them in the page as you wish. Maybe you'd want to have a table, but then you'd like to have the latest comment there in a cell. I hope that Coda implements this. At the pace that they're adding features, they are just great people. But as of now, and right now I'm trying to like combine all my experience of building docs for clients into this video. Right now it's not there, so that's not a thing that I'd mourn over, that I lose these auto subscription to comments. And another thing, well, notifications. It's great to have notifications when these automatic notifications when someone is assigned to something. But on the other hand, you either have them on or off, and you don't really have control whether. So a person, let's say they reassign it to someone and they don't want them to be notified of that. I don't remember if there's any control on that. So yeah, notifications are either on or off for the column. And if you need these notifications badly, you'll either make a button to send out notifications. I mean, you can work this around. Okay, it's not gonna be built in out of the box, but you can always work this around, either with a button that will send out notifications, and maybe you'd want email notifications on some other kind of notifications, or some custom notifications to be sent out, and you'll build a button anyway for that. Or you can make an automation that will basically click the button or do that thing, send out a notification to that person. So point is, you don't lose much by not using the people column. So I really advocate for moving to the making an employees table, because okay, you can have like hourly rate here or whatever, like emails, work emails, schedules, whatever you can build around this table, because that's the table that you created, you have access to it, and you don't have access to the table of people. So that's the rationale. Here. Back to our tasks. So what I wanted to do is make a lookup filter. So why I added the teams thing. So we want to limit the assignment of people just to the people from this team. So what we do, how do we do that? We set up the item settings. We set the filter. We can go with something in here, and actually I don't really like that. Well, you have these 3 dots. Maybe it's a good suggestion for this filter, but it's more confusing for me. So what I'm usually doing, I'm just adding a filter, and you'll notice this over my work. I rarely use the UI conditional formatting, the things that you set up with your mouse. I'm writing formulas. I'm accustomed to writing formulas, and you'd better become accustomed to writing formulas as well, because You may avoid them for a while, like you can try make interactive filters, you can try like do conditional formatting, whatever, without writing a single formula, and I guess that's what Coda wants you to do. But the sooner you will come into habit of writing formulas, the quicker you'll become a master of formulas, and the easier it will be for you to write more complicated formulas in places where it matters and where you cannot do it otherwise. And yeah, I'm gonna record a whole course on formulas, the Coda fundamentals, which will talk mostly about how you design your databases and how you approach formulas, the logic behind them. Okay, I'm detouring a lot. I guess it's not gonna take just an hour. I guess I'll roll into another hour, but that one I'll record perhaps tomorrow or some other day. But there's so much I want to explain. You know, all the things that I wanted to put into the Codatrix blog. Right now, I'm talking it through, and ultimately I'll probably just watch through this video alone, and that's gonna be my points for the articles for the blog, for the best practices article. Okay, so yeah, the teams of that person contains this row, team responsible. And this way in engineering we can only select Jonathan, in product management we can only select Michael, and if the task is assigned to a salesperson we can only select Virginie or Virginie, because there's two pronunciations of the same name. Okay, and also, but okay, we'll do this next. So we have our employees and teams, we have our tasks and projects, we have our template tasks, and now we also want to have some sort of a interface for each person to look at their own tasks. Let's say it's a my tasks interface. We make a view of tasks, and we want them filtered to a person assigned to equals whom? Well, let's do it like this. Assigned to Coda user equals the function that returns current Coda user. So let's say there's a task assigned to I'm Jonathan in this case. Here's the task assigned to me, and is done. It's done. Done or not done. We can later on do something about it. Okay, let's maybe add some bogus, some fake data. So the project name is Codatrix, the project name is Patreon, and the project is, well, the blog, the Patreon, and the YouTube channel. And we'll have our tasks for a blog, and we'll have our tasks for Patreon and whatnot. And what I wanted to do is that every time I create a new project, I generate tasks, I generate template tasks for that project. So already it's a bit hard for me to navigate these 5 tables. And okay, it's just for the educational purposes. Usually the docs that I build, they have like tens or dozens of tables, so it's even harder to navigate them. So the next thing that I usually do, I create like so-called folders to group these things together. And the reason for that is when this list here becomes very, very, very big, you have lots of views, you have lots of nested hierarchy. So yeah, right now it's not that lots of views, but let's say we have really lots of views, and you have the database somewhere here in the bottom, and you're working on my tasks view, on my tasks page, for instance, it just bothers me a lot to always scroll up and down to look at to find the table that I want to modify when I need to go there and modify the table. It's okay. Let me undo all that. So what I'm doing instead, just for the sake of keeping this nested and collapsed, I make folders. So let's say the workflow folder, just like packages and classes, and these are gonna be the projects and tasks. Then the folder, and I'm on a free plan here, so I don't know if I'm if I'm running into any limits. I'm just thinking of making it the best template I can. So the templates, then we have the folder of theme, and don't forget to make these wide. And it's just a pet peeve of mine. You have teams and employees, and I'm trying to sort them from a bigger business like entity to a smaller business entity. So tasks belong to projects and employees belong to teams, something like that. So that's the general logic behind organizing these things. And another thing that I have, there's also a few more things. So we have our filter here, right? So assigned to Coda user, and let's say we want that user to sometimes look at whether the task is done or not. So right now, when you have this kind of setup with filters on the table settings, so what it does, it encourages people to go and tweak table settings, and that's something that we don't want people to do. We don't want employees to go and mess up formulas or mess up filters. I know that for many teams using Coda casually, that's okay. Their team members go and tweak the filters, or their team members go and make the interactive filters. An interactive filter is already a better solution than just than having people go into the filters pane and tweaking filters there. But the problem, many of you might already know this problem. The problem is that if you tweak a filter, or if you tweak an interactive filter as a control on your page, or a canvas control as we call it, it changes its value for the entire doc, meaning for everyone looking at this doc. You know this problem. So yeah, if you create an interactive filter, there's two people looking at this doc at the same time. One people changes the filter to only show done tasks or not done tasks. The table will refresh, the filter will be applied for everyone looking at this table, and that's going to be confusing. Ideally, we want each person to tweak filters independently for themselves in a scenario like this. Multiple people are looking at their tasks. So we already have this something like that. We are filtering them by user, and that's a nice thing that we have this out of the box. But unfortunately, we don't have the user-specific canvas controls in Coda at the moment, and I hope that Coda engineers are looking into this. So you may remember, it's already a suggestion here. I created a whole big tutorial on how to implement user-specific filters using a separate table, and that will definitely go onto our starter template, because that's something that I do. The first thing, perhaps, I'm doing this at the minute number 43 in this video, but that's what I do in the first thing that I do in a new doc. When I create a database section, I create a DB flows table, and I give it a slightly separate icon, cog so that it's not confused with tables that contain actual data. It's just something that I like to do. So the table is db flows, and we have a display column that's gonna be explaining who that flow is. I always keep one flow as a generic no user flow for someone if there's no specific row for a user, for a current user. I am keeping one generic row as one generic user row as a fallback. So there's gonna be a row for poll number 1, poll number 2, poll number 3. I'm gonna set a flow summary. If coda user is blank, then it's a generic flow no user. Otherwise, it's also keep note. I'm not gonna focus on that. Keep note how I'm formatting my formulas. So flow no user and flow, and we're gonna get our coda user name here. Oh, well, Paul Daniel, we have him 3 times here, but still. Obviously, I'm gonna match the employee. So that's our employee record. That's db employees filter by coda user, which is current value coda user equals this row coda user. And we are limiting the list to the first person, so it's matched employee. And we can do this later, or we can do this right now. What I usually also have is that is admin checkbox, and for admins I'm giving a capability to look at the doc as a different user. So right now I'm an admin. I can have a person, so view as employee, and let's say I want to look at the doc as Michael, or I want to look at the doc as Virginie, and in the end I have the current employee column. So this one is a formula, this one is a manual view as a selection, and here I'll have a column for a resulting whom am I looking at. And just to be safe, if is admin, then it's gonna be view as employee. If blank, it's matched employee. So if an admin hasn't selected anyone to look at the doc as, we're taking the matched one. Otherwise, we're always taking the matched one, because even if the user is somehow messing up their record, they got access to the record, but they are not an admin. Or you can have this checkbox stored somewhere else. I don't know. Usually you would lock this page altogether, filter it to show users only to if current user is an admin. So ideally for all tables in your database, you will set up a filter to only show table content if current user is an admin, if current flow is an admin. Well, you can have this here on the flows level, you can have this on the employees level. I usually keep this on the flows level because that's what applies for this doc. So why I have these two tables separate, you would ask. We already have the employees table, why not keep it there? So first thing is that this table should stay replaceable, a table that you can substitute with some other table. So okay, right now you're tracking everything in your one doc. What may happen is that you're gonna split your doc eventually into a cross-doc setup with multiple docs, and you would want to have your employees or your teams you would want them somewhere external, like a separate doc for your team, members that you would then cross-doc, like import into your other docs. So you would want to substitute that. And that's why you want to keep that separate. And remember that this is a data table, so it contains data about your employees. The DB flows, the one that's explained in that video that I showed you earlier, the user-specific filters, this is not a data table. It's not a table that's meant to store data about users in it. It's more of a controls table. So each user of this doc has a row in here that doesn't really contain any data about that user. It just matches them to an employee. It pulls in the data from that employee record using functions, and then it serves all columns in here. They basically serve as inputs for their specific filters. So it's a good practice to not mix together the data with the inputs. We will do that, and you will do that, and sometimes that's the only way to do it, because right now there is no capability. I hope that Coda adds it sometime to have like formulaic tables. Right now you cannot have more rows out of the employees table than you have there, or you cannot really separate it into data and presentation pieces. You will have to create columns on there. But with this specific case, it's always better to make a separate table for DB flows instead of piggybacking on the existing employees table, just because here you can do it. And whenever you can do it, whenever you can split this and you can afford this, like for instance, on the tasks, you'll have new tasks added daily to this table, right? So having a separate table for that will render these tasks in, I don't know, with emojis, with some colored labels, with some text combined with something else, so that you'll have a raw table with data here, like just tasks. Time taken assigned to is done, tasks, something that belongs to the task concept. And then another table where you have a row for each task. You have another row there just to render the task nicely. That's a luxury. That's not, you'll have to, this is also a valid approach, and sometimes you want to do that. You want to have like a backend table and a front-end table, and that's perhaps outside of this starter template, or maybe it is. We'll see how this goes in our next part. It's outside of this part for sure. But what I'm trying to say is, if you want to go absolutely clean and separate data from presentation, you have to write code, make buttons to keep these things in sync, so that whenever you add a task here, and you cannot now just use the new row button here, but whenever you add a task, or maybe you set up an automation and then you run into some quotas, yada yada, it has to create a matching row in a separate table, and that's just not convenient. Sometimes you want to just keep it on the same table, not overthink it, not over-engineer it. So if I want to have something like a nice display of a project and task and assigned to all combined into the same cell, sometimes, and in most cases, it's okay to just do this on this very table. It's just, I'm trying to explain you the two approaches that you have. Either you keep data and presentation separate, but then you have to worry, there's the trade-off, you have to worry about keeping these two things in sync, so that you always have a row there matching a row here. And whenever a person clicks on delete row everywhere, you have to catch that discrepancy, that you've deleted a row there but not there. But sometimes you'll just keep adding columns onto the data table, the presentation columns onto the data table. But we're not doing this with DB flows, because because okay, this is just a pattern. I came up with this pattern, and it's not me who came up with this pattern. I'm just trying to formalize it into some best practice thing. We separate that out from the employees table, and one of the reasons for that, we want to be able to swap this table whenever, swap it with a cross doc, and it should not we should not have to rebuild all our filters in our doc, because we're gonna make quite a few views on this table, right? The flows table. So we want to unlink, to make a soft link between these tables and not a hard dependency. So yeah, the current employee, if it's not an admin, we're just taking the one that's matched to that person. 5 minutes left. And I'm not even halfway done. I'm sorry for this. Again, a reminder, I'm trying to explain all the best practices that are now in my mind in this starter template. The template itself is going to be shared for all patrons, $5 and up. And these videos are gonna be public, and yeah, it's a lot of me talking, but I hope that they are useful and they bring the message across. Okay, so we have the flows, the current employee, and what else? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use, and yeah, in the flows table, that's the first time we're gonna use a named formula, current flow, and in this case we're gonna write a formula that db flows filter for where coda user equals current user, or if blank, we return a flow no user. So if there is no flow for this user, oh yeah, and we make it a named formula. We have current value, why not have a current flow? Or we can name it like this. And now, instead of depending on our user, we're gonna depend on assigned to equals current flow, current employee. And now if I'm an admin looking as Virginie, I'm seeing, well, let's have some tasks, right, for them. Michael and Virginie. I'm seeing this task, the one that's assigned to Virginie. And now if I'm an admin looking at Jonathan, I'm gonna see tasks assigned to Jonathan. And in the next video, I'm gonna make a nice interface for changing this without moving back and forth to another page. Another thing that I have in my docs, I have this header that prompts user to add themselves as a person onto the flow, or have some controls over, if you're an admin, it should show you an admin header, allowing you to bring up a pop-up and change the user that you're looking at right here in the pop-up. But that's gonna happen in the next video, and the next video is gonna happen tomorrow. And there's a lot of things to cover, and it's not gonna be yet another hour. I guess it's gonna be yet another 2 hours, but in the end this should come up to a very nice, very reusable template. Sorry that I'm taking lots of your time, but I hope that it's been informative for you. Cheers!